Good morning and welcome to the October 11th, 2025 meeting of the Coalition of Little Rock Neighborhoods. I'm Kathy Wells, the president. We'd like to go around and introduce everyone today. So I'm from the Downtown Association. I'm from Ward 1. Mr. Director.
My name is Virgil Miller. I'm on the Little Rock City Board of Directors. I represent Ward 1.
Norman Hodges, I represent the Heights Neighborhood Association, and I'm on the Little Rock Planning Commission.
Denise Leeson on the camera. I'm from the Central High Neighborhood.
Ryan Benefield with Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority.
Mike Rhoda from Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority.
Jean Block, Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority.
Pam Baker, Ward 5.
Lawrence Jernigan, Ward 5.
Anita Ridgel, Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority.
We welcome the Reclamation Authority officers today. They are here to give us a presentation about the upcoming hike in our sewer rates and why they think that is required and what kind of a number that will be. We're really anxious to know what kind of number we'll pay. So, authority officials, please take your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you all for inviting us to your meeting. We are really looking forward to sharing with you all the information around our proposed wastewater rate adjustment. Introductions have already been made. You will hear from Jean Block, who's our CEO. You will hear from Ryan Benefield, who is our Chief Operating Officer. You will also hear from Mike Rhoda, who is our Chief Financial Officer. There will also be a time at the end where you feel free to ask any questions. We have a couple of handouts for you all here as well. And I also bought some of our awesome candle grease kits where you will just be able, you can take some, I have them in the bag here, maybe you have one that you take to the neighbor as well. So we look forward to spending the next hour with y'all.
Good morning. Again, my name is Jean Block, and I have the pleasure of leading Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority, and I want to thank you for inviting us to join me this morning. So 2015 was the last time that this utility sought a rate adjustment. At that time, the Utilities Oversight Commission and the Little Rock Board of Directors approved a 5-year rate adjustment. And 2021 was the last year that our rates increased. At the start of this year, the utility hired an outside consultant, Raftellus, to evaluate our rates to determine if there is sufficient for us to perform the necessary work on our system.
Excuse me, we have this lousy engine noise. If you could speak up a little bit for the recording we're making.
Absolutely. The conclusion was the utility needed to increase its rates. In early June, our Oversight Commission approved the rate adjustment. And next week, we will bring it before the entire Little Rock Board of Directors for their consideration and request their approval. Before that happens, we have believed that it was important to explain to the residents of Little Rock who we are, what we do, the amount of the rate adjustment, and why we need it. And to that end, we have held 5 meetings across the city over the last few months, meeting with residents in the business community, making the same presentation. We have a short presentation which will explain the what and the why, and then we are happy to take any questions that you may have. So when I talk about the utility, I always start with who we are not. And that's because we are often mistaken for other utilities. Some people think we are the drinking water utility. That is not us, that's Central Arkansas Water. Some people think we handle storm water. Again, not us, that's handled by the city of Little Rock. Or they think we handle trash pickup. Again, that's not us, that's waste management. We are the sewer utility for the city of Little Rock. What that means is we handle all the used water that leaves homes and businesses. We transport it through our 1,400 miles of collection system that run underground. We send it to one of our 3 treatment plants across the city, bill for water, wastewater, and sewer is all on one UBS monthly bill. So our mission, the mission of the utility is very simple. We protect public health and the environment by reclaiming used water. And our mission is tied to a number of things. We have to have a reliable sewer system. And in this presentation, we'll talk a little bit about that system. We have to meet regulatory requirements that are imposed on us by the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality. We have to do ongoing maintenance to our sewer system to ensure that it can perform the work of reclaiming water. And through it all, we remain customer focused on serving the residents of Little Rock. And we believe that the rate adjustment proposal is no more or no less than what is needed to meet our mission. So let me give you a little bit of information about our utility. Again, we serve the city of Little Rock, College Station, Cameron Village, and Alexander, a population collectively of around 202,000 people. We are the largest sewer utility in the state of Arkansas by a significant factor, with 224 employees. Every year, we treat over 13 billion gallons of used water. That's enough to fill Lake Conway. We have, as I mentioned, 3 water reclamation facilities across the city, 1,400 miles of pipe, 35,000 manholes, and 33 pump stations across the city. Something that I often reference, and people don't necessarily think about when they think about a sewer utility, is how vital we are, how vital our infrastructure is for the residential growth of the city and for the economic growth of this city. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So we have, like I mentioned, 3 water reclamation facilities, 3 treatment plants. Our oldest plant is Adamsfield. It was built in the early 60s, and it came online, it became operational like I said, in the early 1960s, and it is located between 2 runways at the airport. You can actually see at the very top of this picture the end of the terminal of the airport. Our second oldest plant came online in the 1980s, that's Fish Creek, and that is located in the port of Little Rock. Our newest plant is actually about 15 years old. It's our Little Maumelle Water Reclamation Facility. It's way out Highway 10, kind of at the base of Pinnacle Mountain. And then we have a Scott Hamilton, off of Scott Hamilton, a peak flow attenuation basin. And these are actually 3 different basins, storage basins, that collectively can hold 61 million gallons of sewer. We use these as storage basins during heavy rains, and we move that water to our treatment facilities at the timing that works for us, so we don't inundate our treatment plants. Collectively, these are the workhorses of our sewer treatment process.
Thanks, everybody. I'm Ryan Benefield, the Chief Operating Officer. And one thing we kind of wanted to cover with everybody is what we actually do to treat wastewater and turn it into reclaimed water. So this is a very simplistic diagram that shows, that's going to take you through our treatment process. And this is similar to all 3 of our treatment plants have similar processes. So, you know, obviously the water starts at either your home, businesses, industry within the city. We have that 1,400 miles of pipeline, 33,000 manholes, and 33 pump stations. And their job is to get it all to us at one of our 3 treatment plants. So the first thing we do when it gets to the treatment plant, up there, step number 1, is we screen it. So we have these large screens, bar screens, and its job is really to get anything out of the wastewater that probably shouldn't have been there to begin with. Limbs, leaves, those flushable wipes that aren't really flushable, matchbox cars, anything that might get flushed that's not supposed to be in the wastewater, we try to take that out of the system first. Second, step 2 is what we call primary treatment. And primary treatment means if it'll float on its own or sink on its own, we can take it off, right? So we have these giant circular basins in a lot of cases, sometimes they're rectangular, and it scrapes everything off the top that will come off, that floats on its own, and scrapes everything off the bottom that will sink on its own. So at that point, what we have is a wastewater that has only things in it that are we call suspended. So they're suspended in the water. We can't get them out any other way. And this is where the real fun or the magic, and if you've ever heard wastewater treatment plant folks, we get really excited about this part. Sorry, but this is where the magic of our plants happen. We actually use bacteria, microbes. We put bugs into this wastewater, and they're there to consume those things in the water that otherwise can't get out. So like I said, we call them bugs, they're really bacteria. And so we sit there, we let them consume those items, and then they take them up, and then they die, and we take them back out of the water through clarification. So at this point, when you're done with clarification, anything that would get out on its own would, we've consumed everything else with our bacteria, we take out those solids that are generated, and I'll talk about the solids in a second, what we do with them. And then you have a very clear looking wastewater, and it just has to go through a couple more steps. Next, we go through disinfection. So 2 of our facilities use ultraviolet light, 1 uses chlorine, where we further disinfect and kill anything remaining that might be remaining in that wastewater. It goes through extensive testing to meet our permit requirements, and then we send it back out to the Arkansas River in all 3 cases. And the water we're putting into the river is cleaner than the river itself. So I always say that you may not want to swim in the Arkansas River for lots of reasons, but it's not because of our wastewater. By the time we put it in there, it's fully safe for fishing and recreation in the receiving water. So the other thing I mentioned a minute ago is these solids. So we kind of consider ourselves a factory that produces 3 products. We take your dirty water in, we produce clean water on the back end, we produce solids or biosolids that we use to across the delta for fertilizing crops. So it produces a great soil amendment, and then we actually can collect the gas that comes off our processes, and we use it to generate electricity to power our plant. So we produce a renewable biogas off our plant. One thing that comes up a lot, and we just want to get ahead of this question, wastewater a lot of times and generally is more expensive than water. And the reason that the drinking water you're buying, the reason is for most drinking water systems, they just have to do steps 4 and 5. They just have to clarify it and then they disinfect it. We have to go through all these other steps, as you can imagine, to get that water safe enough to put back into the river. So the citizens of Little Rock own what we value as at least a $2.5 billion wastewater treatment and collection system. So our 3 reclamation facilities, if we had to rebuild them from scratch, we'd estimate over $1 billion. All those collection systems across the city, $1.2 billion, and those 33 pump stations, conservatively $165 million to rebuild. So $2.5 billion, and we have over 7,000 pieces of above ground equipment that we have to maintain and keep renewing year after year. I've got a little bit of glare, but you can if you can see it over there, those are the size of the pumps. I think that's on the Cantrell Road pump station down near the river. You can see the size of those pumps compared to that gentleman who's repairing them. And we also have these massive filters at our Adams field facility that we maintain.
Pardon me for interrupting. Mike, do you think that you might adjust that blind and get it darker so the glare is off the screen? Is that better?
Better for me, thanks.
Better for you, Denise?
No.
Oh.
Better for me.
Worse?
Can you live with it, Denise?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not horrible.
Don't be like the eye doctor. 1 or 2?
No, the noise from the HVAC was bad.
Yeah, if the motor cranks up, speak louder.
Okay. These are just some pictures of some of those 7,000 assets, just to give you the scale of the size of what we're dealing with. You know, at our peak, we could put 150 million gallons per day through our 3 facilities. You can see that giant screw pump, the gentleman working to repair it, just the size of the equipment that we're dealing with at the facilities. Here's some more, and some ones we wanted to highlight. Up in the upper left corner, this Yenbacher engine is actually where we take the biogas and we can generate electricity to fully power our Bush Creek facility. Same thing, these boilers up in the upper right, we use our own natural gas to heat those boilers. We heat the water we need to use in our process. We need heated water to digest our solids. Bar screens, as I mentioned, that first step is bar screens. But you can't tell, this is what, probably 8 feet out of the ground. It goes about 40 feet deep into the ground to get down to screen that wastewater continually as it's coming in. It actually moves up, dumps the material, and goes back and re-screens. So this is just an idea of some of the equipment that we maintain. So as part of doing the rate study, we did a 10-year improvement plan that really prioritized what do we need to do to keep these assets going. One thing I should have mentioned earlier that you probably knew, but we are a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week operation. People won't stop flushing, so we can't stop. We can't turn off our plants. We can't go and do this work. We have to be able to do it with keeping everything running. And giant pieces of equipment, that's at Arch Street, just one of the 4 pumps that are down in that pump station. And that's a Trans-Packer. But we estimate it takes at least $20 million annually just for us to renew these assets. So that's not expanding our facilities, that's not adding new technology, that's simply taking these pumps, which are very, very expensive, and replacing them when they hit the end of their useful life and maintaining them long term. And you'll see that is factored into the rate study we did. Second, so that's key, kind of keeping what we have going. This is the other piece that's into the rate study, which is growth. So Little Rock is a growing city. We are seeing residential growth, and we're seeing significant industrial growth, particularly in the port of Little Rock. If you haven't been down to the port itself lately, it is growing very fast. So I think this isn't our number, but the chamber estimates it's going to grow by 6,000 jobs in the next 5 years. And our job at Little Rock Water Reclamation is to be able to handle that growth, be able to support any residential growth, but also have the facilities necessary to provide for that industrial growth. Gene mentioned we are an economic driver, and that's kind of where that comes in play. If we don't have the wastewater capacity to handle the new industry, then they can't locate here with their facilities. And with that, I think Mike is going to talk about the numbers.
Just a few slides. Good morning. It's Mike Rhoda from Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority. Glad to be here on this beautiful October morning. What I want to do is kind of talk about the finances and the need for the rate increase. And I'll cover that in a few slides. This slide here just kind of shows today, based on our 2025 budget, where the money that we get from the rates we charge goes. 67 cents out of every dollar goes directly to infrastructure. That's to the people and the benefits and an investment in terms of renewing the assets. It goes to those people who maintain the collection system, who work out at the treatment plants, the engineers who design all these projects. 67 cents goes directly towards maintaining the infrastructure that Ryan talked about. 19 cents out of every dollar goes to repay debt that we have borrowed over the last several years to construct these significant projects for assets that we expect to last anywhere from 30 to 50 years and beyond. So you can really look at principal and interest in the loan payments, and I think the best way to look at it is put those two together, because all these loans were taken out to build infrastructure. 86 cents out of every dollar that we collect goes directly towards maintaining or paying back the debt for the infrastructure. 1,400 miles of pipe, 3 treatment plants, etc. That leaves 14 cents for overhead, if you will. That's support services, legal, human resources, finance, administration, salaries and benefits for them, as well as supplies, as well as 14 cents basically goes to support the organization. Our business, just like any other, is impacted significantly by inflation. And I want to talk for a minute about inflation. Here are 3 examples of projects to our infrastructure that were significant that we completed in 2021. 2021, as Gene mentioned, was the last time we had a rate increase. So we had projects, there's 3 different ones here, but I'll just talk about the combination and the impact of inflation. These 3 projects in 2021 we completed for a total cost of $51 million. We borrowed the money from the Arkansas Natural Resources Division at a discounted interest rate to construct those projects. If we built them today, they would cost $67 million based on the increase in construction costs over the last 4 years. That's a 31% increase. The rate increase we're seeking goes through 2030. So we've projected what happens if inflation stays at about 3% a year in the construction industry. Those projects completed in 2030 would cost $80 million, or a 57% increase in inflation. The point being, the primary reason for us seeking a rate increase is to keep up with inflation. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more in a minute. Here is the key graph from the third-party consultant who looked at our long-term business plan and made a recommendation on what needed to happen to our rates for us to be able to execute that business plan. And here's the key slide from their presentation. Today, our total expenditures over the course of the year, which include our operating and maintenance expenses, our debt service, and paying for some of our asset renewal with cash, are just under $100 million. And if you impact inflation annually over the operating and maintenance expenses and the construction, as well as just the things that are in our business plan, the projects that are in our business plan, they've estimated what our annual need is over the next 10 years. The yellow line is our revenues today, which are about $67 to $70 million a year. It's a significant operation. But if we stayed with the yellow line, we would start running deficits as early as next year. And in the next few years, we would run out of cash. So we basically could not execute the business plan, which means we won't be able to adequately maintain the system that Ryan and Jean have talked about, that the citizens of Little Rock own. And so for us to hit the green line, which is the recommended revenue line, they have recommended that we increase rates 7.25% across the board for residents and businesses, starting in January of 2026, annually through 2030. So that's 5 years of rate increases at 7.25%. On a compounded basis, that's 41.9%. So rates, if this rate proposal is approved, over the next 5 years, our rates will go up 41.9%. But since 2021, the last time we had a rate increase, if you factor inflation, what has actually happened through today, and project it conservatively through the end of the decade, construction inflation we expect to have been 57%, and our operating and maintenance expenditures, we expect inflation to have impacted almost 47%. So the rate increase that we are seeking doesn't quite recover the full impact of inflation, but the reason that we do not need to seek a higher rate increase than what is proposed is a number of things. One, we've refinanced a lot of money. Back in the early part of the decade when financing costs were really low, we refinanced a bunch of our debt, which helped us conserve cash. And two, each year our operating expenditures, we come in slightly under budget. So a number of things have been done to absorb the impact, but we can't absorb the total impact of 57% construction inflation and 47% operating expense inflation. And then finally, with related to this slide, there was a state law passed earlier this year, the intent of which is to make sure that organizations like ours, but even in particular smaller ones across the state, don't get in financial distress. We're required every 5 years to complete a rate study, and not only complete the rate study, but enact those rates. And so we are only seeking through 2030 because at the end of the day, we're going to have to do another rate study by the end of the decade anyway, number one. And number two, trying to project rates out what they need to be in 2034 today would really be almost like playing, pin the tail on the donkey, because so many things can impact our business favorably or unfavorably over the next few years. If we can borrow money at a lower rate than what we've estimated, we'll save money. If we can borrow money from ANRD instead of the public bond market, we'll save money. Inflation may be lower or higher than what we've expected. So, point being, in 5 years, we'll go through another rate process and determine whether or not the utility needs another adjustment. I think this is my final slide, and what this shows, and really we've got a chart up here, Benita brought handouts, and this has greater detail. But what this shows is, as of today, for a family that uses 4,500 gallons of water a month, which is our average across the 60,000 residential customers we have in Little Rock, they pay $41.73 today for their wastewater charges on their UBS bill every month. The first series of rate increases in early 2026, their bill would go from $41.73 to $44.76. It's $3.03. And averages can be dangerous because, well, I said there's 60,000 customers. 37,000 of those 60,000 customers use less than this. So their impact will be less than $3 a month. And what this chart does is it shows you, and you can go and look at your UBS bill and see what what you're being billed from us today, and it will show you this rate and then what it increases to. So it's a handy chart to have. In summary, the rate increase that we're seeking on average is $3 or less per month for the majority of our citizens in Little Rock, and we believe it's necessary for us to continue to support the mission.
Okay, so a few more thoughts and then we'll open it up for questions. So this past August, a couple of months ago, marked the 2 years that I have served as CEO of this organization. And I've shared with our employees that my vision for the utility is marked by 3 things, the 3 Ps: people, purpose, and presence. And purpose refers to us renewing our numerous above-ground assets, some of which you've seen today, and being able to effectively serve the current and future growth needs of the city of Little Rock, whether that's new neighborhoods or new industry. The rate adjustment that we are seeking is tied to that purpose and to ensure that we can continue to protect the public health and the environment around us. I often joke that no one ever thinks about the sewer utility, and that's okay. No one has to, because of the 224 passionate and dedicated employees, and you see some of them here, that on a daily basis are doing the important work of collecting and treating our used water. But in the same way that every single one of us has to do ongoing maintenance to our homes or to our vehicles, we have, as a utility, have to continually maintain and invest in our $2.5 billion sewer system. The rate adjustment that we are seeking will position us to do this, and we believe that it is no more or no less than what is needed to meet the utility's mission. So with that, the 3 of us are happy to take any questions.
If you're behind me, you're gonna have to speak up, darling. Any questions back here? I have a couple.
Sure.
What about our high poverty rate and our many low-income families for whom even $3 more a month would be a pinch? Is there any assistance of any kind from the utility?
We certainly understand that any rate adjustment is going to impact residents across the city. And we have worked very diligently to have this rate adjustment be the lowest that it could be in order to position the utility to do the necessary maintenance. At this time, there is no assistance program. As we have looked at state laws and the legal framework of our state, we don't believe that we're able to create an assistance program, and so that's why one does not exist. But again, we've spent probably 4 months really working to make the final rate adjustment be as low as it could be.
And of course, you're bundled in on billing in the city of Little Rock with the water and the trash pickup.
That's right.
So any of these has an impact on the total. Right now, we're looking at this one.
Yes.
Are you familiar with whether there's any forthcoming increases in water or trash rates?
I couldn't speak to that.
Be good to check on that.
CAW last year went through a series of rate increases. They were approved. I couldn't speak to the specifics because they were entirely different utility, entirely different management structure, and I'm not aware of what plans are in store for the trash pickup.
But you've been able to do averages on your customers. Surely they've done the same thing. Maybe they could share that with you. And then when someone pops you with a question, you can say, I know that ours is a 7 rate and it's an average of $3. And we know that the water people did one and it was an average of $3 or whatever number might be that suited into that. I'm also curious to know about whether you've had any experience with cutoffs. I would think that's not true in your setup.
Do you want to speak to that, Mike?
Yeah, we are not allowed to shut off access to the sewer system. I believe Central Arkansas Water, if you are severely delinquent on your water bill, they will limit your flow of water, which then limits your flow of wastewater. So we're on the back end of that,
Right.
pun intended. But we cannot block a sewer line. That's a public health issue. So sewer will continue to flow. We do not shut off sewer.
I'm trying to get through the fact that you've got a 3-in-1 billing to whether there is a loss of revenue for any problems of people not paying. It sounds like there's just not.
We do have on an annual basis, pre-COVID, our uncollectibles were about $400,000 a year on a $60 million revenue stream.
Say that again. Say that again.
$400,000 a year pre-COVID on a $60 million a year revenue stream was charges that we billed and did not collect. During COVID, those numbers went up, but there was a temporary program administered by CAW through the federal government for people who qualified to have their water or wastewater bill paid if they could not afford it. That was a temporary program. It has since expired. We would love for that to become a full-time program. One does exist in the electric industry. It's called LIHEAP, which is an acronym for something that has to do with low-income assistance for heat.
And we're familiar with that, and we promote
Yep.
that heavily in our neighborhoods.
Yep, and we would love it if there was a full-time program established for our residents who could benefit from that type of assistance. But unfortunately, in our industry, it was a program that came as a result of COVID, and it had an expiration date. So it is not ongoing funding. And as Jean indicated, from a state law perspective, we are not allowed to provide discounted rates based on income. So,
But could we go over to the uncollectibles?
yeah.
If there were a 501c3 whose mission was to collect money in donations and pay those bills,
Yes.
you'd accept the money.
Yes.
Okay. Director Miller, maybe we need to talk about that.
Well, there is, Entergy has a little space on their bill if you wanna donate $1 or
Yeah.
whatever to a fund to help people. That's something that they do. I don't know if there are any restrictions as to what happened on the wastewater or not, but that's a sort of voluntary program that you see it on your bill and you wanna give $1 to help people, that happens.
Yeah, and since CAW does the centralized billing
Right.
for us and solid waste and them, you know, we'd have to work with them to set that up on a bill and then distribute those monies accordingly.
But does state law prohibit it, or does state law just not speak to it?
Well, our understanding is that the state law does not allow it.
So it's prohibited.
Yes.
So it'd have to be strictly a private thing that just comes in
Yeah.
like any other gift to your industry that makes the check out and says, pay bills
Right.
or whatever. Okay. Might want to pursue that in some way. My other interest is microplastics coming out of a sewer biosolid and applied to crops, which I've read has damaged and seriously interfered with crops in other states. So what's the microplastics rate in our biosolids?
You know, I don't know that we know the actual rate. I know that our biosolids are being successfully reused across the Delta and are actually sought after by farmers for their value, right? Both in a liquid and in a nutrient state.
And that was true in the state of Maine until it ruined the blueberry crops because they found that the microplastics were entering the product. And that's now considered unhealthy to eat put in your body.
Yeah, so I would say most of ours actually goes for a cake crop, not human consumption. Actually, I don't think any of ours goes for human consumption crop.
Might want to check on that, and you might want to try for testing microplastics.
We do. Each year, our biosolids have to be tested independently, and they're classified. And based on their classification from the results of that independent test, they can be applied to certain fields or restricted from certain fields. Ours have tested out at a very high rate, Class A, which gives us a lot of flexibility. But that's a good question. I'm not sure. Being the finance guy, I'm not sure that I know like microplastic levels from Class A to Class B. I certainly don't. But you know, speaking to inflation too, biosolid reuse, our costs when I first joined the utility 6 years ago were about $500,000 on an annual basis that we paid to a firm we contracted with to truck our biosolids to these permitted lands. Those costs have now gone up to $1.5 million. So those are the kinds of increases we're experiencing that are putting pressure on our rates. We bid those services, so we choose the lowest cost provider, but that's an area that has significantly been impacted financially by inflation over the last several years, and we expect it will continue.
Educate me a bit more. Does that mean that you make or lose money on getting the biosolids out the door to the crops?
We don't make money because we don't charge anything for it.
You're just getting rid of it.
Yes.
So that's why you're happy with this transportation cost.
That's why
Because
we
it's
have to
better
do it.
than something else that you might do instead.
As Ryan mentioned, biosolids, or the solids are the third byproduct of our water treatment process. So we are going to have them
Yes.
in great quantities, whether we want them or not.
Right.
And so the land distribution is the most efficient, effective, and I would say cost-effective way for us to dispose of the biosolids.
On the other hand, nobody's sewer system ought to be tossing microplastics into the food chain.
Sure, I think we would all agree with
So,
that.
you know, let's make sure we know that's not happening. And the next time you get that question, you can have a couple of more details to say. It's tested and it's going to hay and it's not going into any food chain, period.
And I will reiterate the point that Mike just made. It is tested, and there are two levels of results, and the highest level of results is Class A, and our biosolids have been testing out at Class A. So we can say unequivocally, from the perspective of Department of Environmental Quality, that our disposal method of land application is safe.
Have they caught up to microplastics yet? Just asking.
As the Department of Environmental Quality, I would fully anticipate that they have.
Any other questions?
So in the news, we hear about the cost of electricity increasing. in a lot of places due to AI facilities that are consuming a lot more energy because of AI. And presumably they are, the cost to generate that additional energy is not being passed on to the AI industry, but to your other consumers in the market. So to what extent does that happen with wastewater? And if we're expecting like 6,000 additional jobs out at the port, to what extent are costs associated with increasing that capacity out there going to be shared with the industries that will be consuming those services?
Yeah, I can't, and I think, I mean, we're subject to rising electric rates just like your home. I mean, that's that's true.
I'm just comparing.
Yeah, yeah. So, but what we do, so we can't necessarily control that side of it. But what we can control is how much electricity we use. So that's why.
I think the question
It's a
is,
different question.
Yeah,
you
okay.
have a different rate for
Let me take a
businesses
step.
than you do residential.
Let me
Do
take
you
a
charge
step.
them more because they're using more than you do the residential people that flush once, but in a business that's
You said you were
$1,000
doing a same percent increase in this rate hike for industrial as for residential.
Right.
Shouldn't theirs be double that?
Actually, it would be the other way.
Okay, educate us.
When our rate consultants come in, they do two things. They took a high-level look at our business plan, and then they also do a cost of service analysis. And they take all our processes, and they take all our inflow, and they distribute our costs appropriately. And if we adopted a fully cost-based approach, the residential rate increase we would be looking at would be double. And the commercial rates would be relatively flat. They would go up slightly. So the way to look at that today is, in Little Rock, our commercial rates, there's 7,000 commercial customers, there's 60,000 residential. A true cost of service analysis, our commercial customers are subsidizing our residential customers. If we adopted a fully cost-based service from what this rate study showed, again, we would be increasing residential rates. I think the number was 14%, and on the commercial side it was like 1.5%. So to the extent that the port grows in the future because of these large data centers and the increase in water and what that does to our infrastructure, when we do our next cost study in 2030, if we have one of those, they will be able to identify what is the true cost to our system and what would be the rate that we would need to charge that entity to fully recover those costs. So what I understood your question to be is, are residences subsidizing the cost of those operations? Today the answer is no. It's actually the other way. Will they in the future? We'll have to look at the next cost-based service analysis to see if we have one of those customers and we set a rate. We'll have to look at what are the true costs we are incurring because of them, and do we need to increase or decrease that rate to recover? Okay? Does that answer your question?
Has the industry traditionally and historically operated so that residential rates are in fact lower by policy than commercial and industrial?
I can't really speak to the industry. The issue becomes once you start with across-the-board increases and you get away from true cost of service, it's really difficult to go back. Because had this utility 10 years ago adopted cost-based rates, again, the same thing would have happened. Commercial rates would have been lower, residential rates would have been higher, and then when we did an update this time, we wouldn't be looking at 15% to make up for what we did in the past. We'd be looking at probably something more reasonable. Once you make the decision to do across the board, you're almost...
That's what I was getting at. Historically, this has been your policy.
Historically, this is what the utility has done, and once you start down that road, it gets really difficult to get away from. Because
It's useful to know.
we are, you know, we're not trying to convince people that our rates are affordable. What we're trying to do is tell you we took that under account when we went through this study. The first analyses that came through weren't 7.25%. They were suggesting something higher. We continue to work at ways to bring our costs down over the next 10 years to get to a point where we felt, in comparison with inflation, the increases we were asking for were reasonable, and as Jean said, no more or no less than what we think we need to run the system.
The other point that I want to make to your question, one of the things that the rate consultant looks at is the utilities' projected revenue streams. And with all of the growth that is happening in the port, you know, you just read the paper or watch the news, there's a company after company that's been announced as coming in. We have not factored in any revenue from them because we really don't know. They're all different types of users. At this juncture, we don't know. We anticipate that we'll see revenue bumps from these new industries, but when we go to do the next rate study in 2030, we should have a clearer sense of what revenue we can anticipate from them, which should then allow us to moderate or adjust the rate adjustment that might be needed at that time.
So you're basing your analysis on current users, not on anticipated ones.
That's correct.
Okay, and you performed a calculation of the comparison of what your capital projects cost to 5 years ago to what they would cost now. So does that mean that you're anticipating equal number of capital projects in the coming period? Capital the same number, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. So from the early 2000s to about 2024, this utility was singularly focused on rehabbing and renewing our collection system. The state environmental agency had imposed a consent administrative order on the utility in 2006. What preceded that was a settlement that the utility entered into with the Sierra Club in 2002 that required...
Familiar with that one.
Yes, that required, because in the early 2000s, there were sanitary sewer overflows happening across the city, 339 locations where sewer was pouring out of manholes because our collection system was not tight, because we didn't have enough storage. Those three $61 million basins, we built those. And so for the last 24 years, we have been singularly focused on rehabbing and repairing that collection system. We spent $500 million to do that. And in March of last year, the State Department of Environmental Quality released us from our consent administrative order. And the Sierra Club said, job well done. Both of them said we have met the requirements of fixing our collection system. Fast forward to at this moment, our focus is now on those vertical assets, everything that is above ground. Those 3 treatment plants that were built in the 60s, 80s, and 2011, they're showing their age. Those 33 pump stations across the city, they are showing their age. They need work. Their infrastructure needs to either be fully replaced or repaired, rehabbed. And so,
Is that bill gonna be the same as the past bill?
So to finish your question, or to finish my answer to your question, we will have some capital projects, but the majority of the work for the next 10 years is going to be focused on rehabbing and renewal, all of that above ground infrastructure. I couldn't tell you, Ryan could probably tell you, the exact number of capital projects, but suffice it to say, the money is being funneled into a different direction. It's basically, the renewal work that we have to do at our plants and at our pump stations. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Not quite.
Okay.
I was trying to get to, okay, you know what you did the past 24 years, year to year to year. Never mind what it went for. You know what you spent. Now, you're going to be spending the same amount going forward.
Let's fix that.
I guess we were puzzled about, hey, goody, we got the overflows fixed. Now we can mop our brows and stop spending
You know,
much.
we thought the same thing too.
Okay, so how did that work
We
out?
hope the same thing too. But here's, so I'll take you back to the point that Gene's been making. We believe the citizens of Little Rock own a system that is somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.5 to $3 billion. Corrosive environment. If you want to replace that system over 100 years, basically maintain it so that it lasts 100 years, you take the $2.5 billion divided by 100, that's $25 million a year just to do asset renewal. Then there's growth. We've got about $170 million in our 10-year capital plan to fund growth. That includes growth in West Little Rock on the residential side, and it includes growth in the port. It's about 2 to 1. Residential growth, because of the topography in West Little Rock, is more expensive, we believe, estimates today, than it will be to provide growth in the port. We also don't have any revenue because we don't know when that's going to happen. So, another reason for not asking for a 10-year horizon is, let's say that growth occurs and we start to experience the revenue, and let's say we're charging the rate appropriate to recover the cost that those services require to treat. Then the next time we do the rate study, we'll have more revenue, we'll have more customers, greater revenue, and that'll reduce the load for everybody going forward. But $25 million a year is going to be an asset renewal. $170 million over 10 years is about 17. So right there, just between asset renewal and growth, that's about $42 million a year spend in capital over the next 10 years if you just take the average. Then we have to replace trucks and vehicles, IT systems. So we were spending at roughly $60 million a year over the, oh no, that's not quite right. Probably at about $45 to $50 million over the 20 years for the CAO. And meeting the new guy in 2019, I was hopeful, boy, once that goes down, our capital budget could probably go to like $18, $20 million. That's wrong, because the numbers I'm just sharing with you right now say that's at least $45 million a year. Now that's greatly impacted by inflation, because I shared with you what has happened in the construction industry in inflation since the last time we had a rate increase. But the truth of the matter is, the work doesn't slow down, the financial demands don't get less because the CAO is behind us. We now have to take care of the system that we spent 20 years fixing so that we don't put the city right back where it was 25 years ago, entering a CAO that costs, that regardless of cost, it was a public health issue.
Amen.
So, while we would love to be able to say it's over and we're going to be able to start spending less, it's just not the reality.
Does Alexandria pay Little Rock a fee to be part of your system?
Alexander?
Alexander?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
fees, yes.
We have an extension agreement with them, and their customers pay outside city rates, which are 1.5 times the rate that a Little Rock resident would pay.
Has there been any consideration in latching on to North Little Rock's reclamation utility, or do you know?
I don't know, Director, that's really more of a political question than
Well, physically, could you even do that across the river?
They don't need you to
Do I look at that?
It would be
and honestly, what I would say is,
You can administer from one executive suite if you did a whole bunch of diplomacy, but that's as
To
far
my
as it would
knowledge,
go.
Forget it. I have another question. On stage 1, when you're flushing in your house, I think that's where you said the cigarette containers and the non-flushables that are really not, or the flushables that are non-flushable. What do you do to prevent the idea that flushables are advertised as flushables. What do you do?
Oh, the wipes.
Wipes, tampons,
And she's sitting right there. No, we have an extensive public outreach campaign.
but what do you
including-
do with the businesses that are making the product, that advertise it as a flushable, and yet you all know, and where does that go? I would like to know, you said you've got the stuff that goes out into the fields because that can be done. What do you do with the cigarette butts and the non-flushables,
Everything that we
where does
screen
that
out.
go?
Those go to the landfill. So anything
Yeah.
we take out at that early screening spot,
That's
you know,
number
matchbox
one.
cars, everything, that simply has to go to a landfill for disposal.
And where is that landfill? The Little Rock landfill?
So yeah, we
Standard customer, you're not over in hazmat.
no, that's a standard solid waste. That's not a
Okay.
haz waste
Okay,
at all.
So where is it?
Dixon Road, is it?
Yeah,
south of the city.
yeah, it's south of, it's the southeast part of the city.
I've been there.
Yep.
So what are you doing with businesses that are promoting this as flushable? What are we doing to say that is not true and
So-
don't advertise it that way?
So that 20 years of work that I talked about that enabled the utility to be released from the CAO, as much that was happening on the capital improvement side, the utility started and has built a very robust public outreach program. And it looks many ways. Kathy at the start of the meeting mentioned National Night Out. We were at 2 of the National Nights Out. We're at festivals across the city, Food Truck Festival, State Fair, Neighborhood Association meetings. And that public outreach is really multifaceted. It's what not to flush. And there's a whole list of things, dental floss and wipes. It's providing these free can of grease kits. At the Food Truck Festival that happened a month ago, we gave away 400 of these cans for free. I spent an hour out there with our team. People were coming up in throngs to get these cans, and they knew about the cans. They knew about the value of not flushing grease. You're shaking your head in the back of the room, of not putting grease down the kitchen sink. We are in schools constantly. To businesses, you asked about businesses. We have a strong outreach program with restaurants, every restaurant across the city, where we are meeting with them to talk about how they should handle their kitchen cooking grease. It's the FOG program, Fats, Oils, and Grease program. And we have a strong, really partnership type relationship, we don't come in as the big bad regulator saying, don't flush your grease. You know, we come in and really work collaboratively with them so they can establish grease traps that meet our specifications. So that public outreach program is multifaceted.
But they still, in capitalist America, can make that all day long and sell it all day long, and you're helpless to stop them unless you get a very different congressional makeup.
And I know at the federal level there's been legislation that's been proposed, and
There in some states, their legislature, they've proposed where they cannot put certain language on wipes. California is an example.
California
And-
always is an example.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
California is always our example.
Oh, okay. The home state of our CEO. And so, but for us, it's just strictly an outreach effort, just educating the public. We don't have any authority in terms of controlling the businesses.
Are there other questions?
Any questions?
I do have one.
Yes.
To what extent are increasing costs of cybersecurity affecting your overall budget, thus your rate increase request?
Pretty insignificant.
Okay, well, that's good.
You know, from a cybersecurity perspective, we benefit from having CAW do our billing because they own the billing system. So our impact of protecting the information in the billing system is much smaller than CAW's. We, coincidentally, just had a cybersecurity firm come in and review our systems, review our processes, do vulnerability scans, and we've scored very well. To date, we have not had to make any significant investment, nor do we have a significant investment for cybersecurity in the plan that is driving the rate increase.
Knock wood, quick.
Pardon me?
We believe in the superstition when you're bragging about how things are going, you knock wood. So that doesn't bring down the gods of destruction.
No, but we believe we're in pretty good shape. We got things well protected. We've got good disaster recovery plans, and we have these things tested by outside consultants because we're not cybersecurity experts, but we do realize the responsibility. The direct answer to your question is there is not a significant cost in our plan other than what has been in there to maintain, to protect cybersecurity.
Other questions?
I have one more question. It's been a while since I've looked at the UBS bill, but since 3 different utilities are putting their cost on the same bill, when I looked at it, when we were talking about glass recycling and adding to the cost of the recycling, the total at the bottom of the 3 is together, and then you do a sales tax on that total. So then you're really increasing it a little bit more than 3.41 cents. It's because of the sales increase on taxes to the total that the 3 of you added together increase. Have you taken that into, is that still the same? I'd like to, kind of
So when
throw up
I'm
a
talking
bill.
about our rates, I'm talking about just our rate.
I know,
There
but as a
is-
total, when you're paying your UBS bill, you're also paying taxes on the 3 different rates together.
Yeah, and I don't
And the
think there's a
bottom line that you're paying.
sales tax. I think it's a city's franchise tax, and we have to
Whatever it
pay. We
It's the
basically have
same
to
thing, the
collect-
city's
It is.
collecting
It's gonna
money
increase that
We have-
of
increase,
every
that
bill.
rate.
So out of the example I gave you of $41.73, that was just the charges that we collect. To the extent that our rate goes up in that example for the customer who's using 45 gallons, it's $3.03. Their franchise tax will go up 30.3 cents. And that will be collected and remitted to the city of Little Rock. So, yes, the answer to your question is the impact, the overall impact to our rate increase also increases the franchise tax fee. And my slide did not address that. It said on the bottom, excludes the city franchise.
Okay. So it is a little bit more than what you said.
The total impact to the consumer, when CAW, Little Rock Solid Waste, or our organization increase our rates, the franchise tax goes up as well.
That's sort of a hidden tax that no one ever addresses when you're talking about a rate increase. You don't also say, and your bottom line's gonna increase by 30 cents too.
That's very true. Now, we have had folks like Baker Curris come to us and say, we shouldn't have a city sales tax on these bills.
Right.
So, if you ever calculated what the city would give up if they quit that, it
That's
would be
been
painful, I know,
calculated.
but maybe we ought to keep it in mind, just to know, with it and without it, Director Miller.
Generate the income somewhere.
Because,
And I look at that just like you pay your sales tax on
That's
anything
exactly
else
right.
you buy. I'm sorry, I don't see any difference in that.
I think that's.
there's many ways you can view the policy. And we've had that discussion raised up in that direction. Not that we've endorsed it, I might add, but we know that it is in discussion by some advocates who want to tighten up the city. Any other questions? Back here? Okay. Thank you very much for a full presentation. This has been live streamed to the Coalition Facebook group at clrn.ar. Its recording will be posted as a link for future absent friends. We're now going to pause our presentation on live stream for the ability to close down your presentation. Thank you very much for coming. We're paused for 5 minutes.
Wonderful questions, thank you.
We pride ourselves on researching thoroughly.
I do not know.
Just have to. I never did know what was going on after they're full of